The government has issued a stern directive to OTT platforms urging strict adherence to the Code of Ethics under the 2021 IT rules. This comes amidst controversy over the YouTube show India's Got Latent, where YouTuber Ranveer Allahbadia and guests faced a strong backlash for vulgar remarks. I think what we are looking at this evening is this debate. It is time-tested, but it's come up once again on freedom of speech and expression, which we all value, versus what are the limits of that? And that's something which needs a lot of care to ensure that we don't dilute our freedoms, but we don't dilute our values either. Joining us now, Mayank Tiwari. He's a screenwriter. He screenwrote Newton, Delhi Crime, and other films. Radhika Vaz, Satyam Surana, who is an advocate and complainant in the case against Ranveer Allahbadia, and Rahul Ishwar will be joining us in a little while as well. But Mayank, let me come to you first. What is the line that actually one needs to draw? Because on the one hand, we want to protect our rights, we want to protect our freedom of speech, and then something like this comes up. And I think the argument which some people would say is that when somebody does something so outrageous as Ranveer Allahbadia, and everybody agrees that what he did was wrong, then that can be used as an example to cut down on freedom of speech in the future on cases which aren't as obviously wrong. It's tricky, isn't it?
Thank you, Vishnu. And before I start, I just want to say I'm a big fan of Radhika's work. Like a big fan. I love her comedy, and I think like what she does is like pushing the limits, and I really like that. So thumbs up. So now, having said that, I'll just quickly make 2 points. See, there are two things that are happening here, and that is what the conversation I am following on the internet. There are two things. The first thing is what the remark is, okay? So the first thing I want to say about the remark, which I have researched now, is that it's not an innocent remark. It's an old joke about 10, 12 years old in America. Somebody has already said this. So Mr. Allahbadia has heard this somewhere, and then he has said it. The second thing that I want to say is a business thing, okay? Because a lot of content creators make business, it's their business. And one of them is Samay, Raina, who has created by far the biggest show India has ever seen. The kind of volumes people watch, the kind of tickets they go for, it's a rage. Every YouTuber is jealous of him today.
Right.
And single-handedly, with one remark, he has killed that boy's career. He has killed it. That show is gone. What was that show doing? It was calling poor people who had no platform to speak on. And there was a panel of comedians, and they would roast them, and they would joke around. And the responses that some of those people gave is the title of the show. India has got latent. We have so much talent. And that's the point, but that talent is latent. Anyhow, so with this one stroke, this gentleman who first this video comes at 12 o'clock at noon, and in 2 hours his apology comes. My God, like really, I'm sounding like a conspiracy theorist here. I understand, but this is not some innocent remark.
No,
the second thing I want to say,
Vishnu. Yeah.
The second thing I want to say, Vishnu, and I want to be very clear about this. See, there is a limit, okay? This scene that is being described here, and I read a lot of psychology. The scene that is described here is a child or an adolescent witnessing parental sex. It is a trauma. And India is a very poor country. 8,899 people live in one room. This trauma is living with a large part of our population. They have no access to mental health. They can't pay a therapist. It is soul crushing. You can check with any psychologist. It is a very violent thing for a child. And what this innocent remark, does at some level, it also normalizes adult-children relations. It's normalizing it in some way. It's starting the conversation there. And today, it's a big problem. So all of these things are free speech is protected by the Constitution, and I think any great lawyer, even a competent lawyer, will be able to protect it simply by, I have full faith in the Supreme Court of India and the Constitutional Bench, so I have no worries about that. Now, say we take Radhika's comedy. She does some brilliant comedy. Brilliant. There are some jokes of hers which are like simply brilliant about marriage, about men-women relations. She sits across men and talks to them and, engages with them. And I love the way they are not able to answer back. It's brilliant.
No, so Mayank, let me just interrupt to keep the strike rotating.
Please.
But I do take the point, Mayank, that this needs to be balanced, and those remarks, in your opinion, weren't accidental.
No.
Radhika, let me come to you next. Does the government's advisory to OTT platforms signal a necessary safeguard against obscene comment, or do you see this as a step towards ultimately stifling comedic voices under the guise of ethics?
Hi, and thank you so much for having me, and thank you, Mayank, for making sure I'm going to be cancelled soon. Listen, like he said, my book is called Unladylike. I definitely, as a comedian, feel that my job is to push the boundaries on how people think, and sometimes the way that we push people to think differently is by saying things that may cross the line for some people, but may not cross the line for others. Morality is such a hard thing to judge, because what is moral for me may not be moral for you. And the thing that actually, of course, this is going to lead to censoring everybody. Everyone is going to be self-censoring, being censored by other people. It is going to affect the quality of everything. And the thing that actually occurs to me in this whole thing that just jumped out at me was what a double standard we have when it comes to sex and violence. We in India seem to have such a high threshold for tolerance of violence. Violence, words, violent action, nobody blinks. But anything of a sexual nature, sexual words, sexual actions, we have a really big problem with it, which is so strange, because in this particular case, this person, he's made a comment which he's, of course, like Mayank pointed out, completely plagiarized from somewhere else, but that's another point. It is of a sexual nature, but it doesn't actually draw hate towards anybody. It doesn't call a threat to anybody. It's not even an act. It's just words. Whereas there are threats now, threats to him, to Samay.
It's triggering to... I want to interrupt you, ma'am. I'm really sorry to interrupt you. I'm really sorry. And please don't... this will sound a little bit like mansplaining. But, this is triggering a lot of people who have been traumatized by such scenes in their own homes. This is triggering.
Okay, so one second. So let me answer that.
Hold on,
let me answer. Let me just hang on. So while that may be triggering, I completely understand that part. I also feel like the way the death threats are coming, and they're on public platforms, they're out there, those are also very triggering. So I'm
triggered by that too.
I've heard a lot of it. Hang on. Listen, we listen to you, you got to listen to us, man. So as a woman, I've heard a lot of people say that, this is very offensive to our sisters and our mothers. And yes, it may be. But I'll tell you something, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. To me as a woman, the most vile words are not half as offensive as the slightest threat of physical violence. That,
all right, fair enough.
To me,
fair
is
enough.
something we should think about.
Let me take that across to Satyam Surana. He's been a complainant in this in the Allahbadia case. And let me ask you a question. I'm asking you to look at it from a different aspect. We all want our freedom of speech. It's the basis of everything that we do. But how can creators navigate the tension between pushing artistic boundaries and respecting legal laws? How do they do that? Because Satyam, you are a complainant in this case, but as a lawyer, you are also entrusted with protecting our freedoms. So how does one navigate that boundary?
Hi Vishnu, thanks for having me back. See, the answer to your question is clear. For creators to respect the law, it is essential that the creators know the law. What is the law? The basic principles where free speech is restricted are enshrined within the Constitution itself. Contempt of court, public morality, indecency, sovereignty, integrity, and religious harmony. These are the 5 basic principles which we need to adhere when we speak anything. Be it stand-up comedy, be it writing movies, be it writing scripts for plays, for theatre, or anything. No performance or no creative activity can bypass these basic fundamental principles that restrict the freedom of speech and expression, which is a constitutional value. Secondly, coming to the other subsidiary laws of the land, criminal laws, the civil laws, the guidelines issued by the government, the advisories issued by the government, all of these things need to be taken into consideration by every publisher, by every content creator before the content. We need a level of publicity by the government itself, as well as the intermediaries, as well as the platforms. I was just going through the rules that are cited in this advisory itself, the ethics rules. The ethics rules lays down a 3-level mechanism for grievance redressal, level 1, level 2, level 3 in the rule 10 to rule 13 of the ethics rules. And I was surprised myself to know that in the second level of the mechanism for grievance redressal, the rules mandate that a retired judge of the High Court or the Supreme Court or any eminent personality from the media or this fraternity be appointed as a chairperson of the self-regulating body, which is a self-regulating body of the publishers or a body of publishers themselves. Have we ever heard of such a body being existing in our country? Have we ever heard of a person getting access to such a body? I say that in order to make the creators or make the publishers follow the law, it is also at some point of time make them accountable to it.
Sure.
So we need something like a consumer redressal forum, which is certainly not a penal or a criminal mechanism, but an extra penal mechanism which will ensure that a deterrent effect is made on this community itself of content creating, of publishers, or all the stakeholders of this people, which will ensure that these rules and these standards of freedom of speech and expression, as well as the other standards of the law of the land, are followed.
Fair enough. Let me go across to Rahul Ishwar. Rahul, is the call for self-regulatory bodies in order to police content a fair compromise, or does it just shift the burden of censorship onto platforms, right, OTT platforms, while leaving free speech vulnerable to subjective interpretation?
Vishnuji, the core principle is creativity's twin sister is sensitivity. Liberty's twin brother is responsibility. There is no creativity and liberty without sensitivity and responsibility. We should be very clear about this. I'm a Hindu right-wing activist. I was the person who gave case against Sadhvi Prachi for her absolutely Islamophobic remarks. And I made it a point, I sent it to Election Commission not to allow her to campaign because of her abhorrent Islamophobic remarks of Muslim Mukt Bharat. These are kind of perverted hate speeches that we need to control. So free speech ends where hate speech begins. Dark humor ends where perversion begins. We should not allow perversion and hate speech in the name of humor or even free speech. That's the reason why self-regulation is one aspect. And Ranveer, Allahbadia, as you may know, is a right-leaning person. He belongs to my spectrum. I like him too. But at the same point of time, what he done was unpardonable. What he's done was absolutely unjustifiable. I have an 8-year-old kid who wants to be a YouTuber. I don't want him to grow up seeing such kind of obscene contents. That's the reason why self-regulation to a part, all the channels, they need to have guidelines. In the same way, government and the courts need to have a Lakshmana Rekha. We can definitely debate until the cows come home where to draw the Lakshmana Rekha. But some kind of Lakshmana Rekha should be there. Otherwise, child pornography, perversion, rape tubes, dead bodies, necrophilia, so many things are available in the world.
Sure.
And our youngsters should not be contaminated by such things. That's the reason why we can definitely debate whether you should draw it here or here, whether it should be a left liberal Lakshmana Rekha or a right conservative Lakshmana Rekha.
All right, fair enough. I've got time for two more comments. Mayank, go ahead.
We cannot live in anarchy.
See, Mr. Rahul, थोड़ा सा आप शांत हो जाएं, एक बात सुन लीजिए. And thank you for admitting that this boy is of your own ecosystem. So please, that's very good. So you have an ecosystem. That's really good. So I just want to say one thing and very clear. There is a little bit of a difference. Now there are OTT platforms. These are owned by corporates. So everybody knows that. YouTube is not an OTT platform. YouTube is internet. You can't censor internet. No government in the world can censor internet. When you have to censor internet, you have to shut it off. That's the whole game. That is why the world is where it is today. That is the problem with the internet. You can't censor it. It will show up in other places.
Mayank, Satyam disagrees with you. Satyam, go ahead, yeah.
Yeah, I would like to clarify that YouTube is not pure internet. YouTube is an intermediary. And YouTube is bound by the law to have its own grievance redressal officer and a grievance redressal mechanism which is based in India. The rules of 2021 mandate every intermediary to set
Please, I have read those rules. And don't shout. आप आराम से भी बोल सकते हो.
No one shouting. Go ahead, Mayank.
मैं बस ये बोल रहा
No
हूँ
one
कि
is shouting. No one is shouting.
no, I'm just saying
आपका आवाज थोड़ा बड़ा होगा, कंप्यूटर का आप कम कर लीजिए.
हाँ ये भी हो सकता है, शायद मेरे कान भी खराब हो सकते हैं.
हाँ.
हो सकता है ना सर, होने को तो क्या क्या नहीं हो सकता. आपको पता है राहुल ईश्वर जी, आई जस्ट वांट टू मेक अ जोक. देयर इज वन जेंटलमैन इन इंडिया ऑफ योर इकोसिस्टम हु इज कॉलिंग हिमसेल्फ अ गुरु. ही क्लेम्स टू रीड माइंड्स. Mr. Rahul Ishwar, is it possible for somebody to read minds? You have a God man who's claiming to read minds.
All right, okay. Let's not take random pot shots about all of this. Let us keep this focused.
Anyway,
let me
I
go
just want to say one last
Let me
thing.
go back to Radhika for a final comment because we are running out of time. Radhika, given the public's mixed reaction to Ranveer Allahbadia's remarks, in fact, not mixed, I think there's been overall outrage. Should cultural outrage dictate legal boundaries, or should the freedom of speech stand firm regardless of offended sensibilities?
You know, the thing is, because it's such a subjective thing, like the other gentleman was saying, that, you know, we should draw Lakshman Rekha, this is unpardonable. That is one person's opinion. That cannot become, or even if it's 500 people's opinion, it cannot become the law of the land. We have to stick by what's already in the Constitution. We do have freedom of expression in this country. Yes, there are certain, restrictions on it that perhaps individually we should follow them. But it is not an unpardonable thing that this boy has done.
All right. Well, you feel it's not is not unpardonable. Others do feel it is
Perversion is not
unpardonable.
free speech.
Let's all stick to what the law has to say, but let's importantly understand and wrap this up by also ensuring that our safeguards which exist to protect freedom of speech shouldn't be misused either.